Welcome to episode 116 of the How'd It Happen podcast, hosted by Mike Malatesta. In this episode, Mike welcomes Dave Stamm, the CEO of Stamm Media and the CEO of Stamm Technologies.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I've got Dave Stamm with me, as you heard in the introduction. Dave, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
And we are live and in person in my studio today, which is fun because so many of these have had to be done virtually over the last 5 months or so. So it's really cool to sit across from someone, have the headphones on, and be able to see somebody's eye to eye. So, Dave, I start every one of my shows with the same question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Well, Mike, it was an interesting path in the beginning. As a kid in grade school, I always enjoyed business a lot. I just was fascinated by it. So my mom would take me to the library, and all I would do is find magazines and books and try to teach myself business in grade school. And so in the early days, I taught myself how to program in fourth grade. And this is back, granted, I'm old now, so this is when programming wasn't cool. You know, programming is cool now, but it wasn't then. And so I taught myself how to program, and from behind a keyboard through later years in grade school, not telling anyone about it because I didn't want to embarrass the nerdy side of me. I would write programming code and things like that and sell it online for certain. And this is before the internet existed, so it was a little bit more difficult. So that was kind of the start of it. And then when I was 14, my dad came and said, "Well, you know, you're going to need to get a job this summer." I was like, "What?" So I went with my friends and took my bike up to, I was in New Berlin, Wisconsin, and I biked up to the brand new building that was being built, and it was a Subway sandwich store, and I went up there and applied, and within about 2 months, I was the night shift manager and running the store for him and keeping tabs on everything. My parents would come pick me up at the end of the night and all that kind of stuff. And
wow, you're fast. You're an accelerator.
Still to this day, definitely not very assertive by any means, but I think I just had a lot of responsibility. I always felt responsible, just to whatever I was involved in, just doing the right thing and keeping track of stuff. And even as a kid, I didn't realize it being a kid then, but looking back, I just was responsible, and that was kind of it. So from there, I went on to a number of years at Wheel and Sprocket, which is a bike store here in Milwaukee,
no
and I loved working there. I was probably there 5 or 6 years, and one of the best jobs I've ever had. And just try to figure out there they let you be entrepreneurial. You could go and work on something interesting, and it was really a fun place to be.
Did you work with Liza LeClaire?
I sure did. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. She was on the management team when I was there.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it was her and Chris that were kind of running the show at the time, and. Just a great place to work. It could have a high school kid's number one job. Just so fun.
What made it so great? Before I don't want to cut off your answer, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was so fun because they gave you guidelines, but there weren't a lot of rules, and so it taught me how to sell. They would publish the numbers every day and every week about how, what the sales goals were. And so for me, the fun part was seeing if I could, for my summer, I'd only work in the summers because I was in high school, if I could outpace some of the annual guys' sales if I really busted my hump in the summer.
Okay.
And that was one part of it. The other part was it was just a great, camaraderie of people there, that everybody enjoyed biking, but otherwise everybody was pretty laid back. And I was just this shy kid, and, I had just got there, and it was kind of this big place, and everyone made me feel welcome. And I just felt at home there.
And did you have and I'm sorry to get off topic here, but did you have a friend or someone who was working there, or how did you come to?
Yeah, great question. My uncle was there. My uncle was working there. He's a diehard biker. Still is. He moved to Boston, but he's a diehard biker. And he said to me, we need some people there, salespeople, and you're young, but I think we could train you, and you should come here. And I thought, well, it'll be kind of the next step. So I left Subway to go to Wheel and Sprocket and spent some good time there. Okay.
Again, sorry for getting you off track, but that was an interesting little path to follow.
Yeah, you look back and it all kind of plugs together. So I ended up going to UW-Whitewater for college. And while I was there, I told Wheel and Sprocket, trying to and I said, well, I love working here. How about if I sell bikes on campus here in Whitewater for you? And so I started doing that, but I was having trouble kind of getting sales together. And I took a student representative job at Apple Computer. And it was like my dream job, right? I was the secret nerd from back in grade school, and I was kind of repressing this nerd side of me. And I'm in college, and I see this sign, and it says Apple Computer is hiring for a student rep. And I didn't know what that was, and I called him, and I in the interview nearly begged them for the job. They were interviewing across campuses for it, and I ended up getting this job. And granted, no one would think twice about it. It was probably paying minimum wage at the time, but they let me sell computers across different campuses in the Midwest, and I would travel there and kind of sell these computers. And it was just a fascinating job. And Apple at the time, well, everybody loves Apple now. This is in the 90s, and Apple was in doomsday. It was like the covers of Forbes magazine was, Apple was doomed.
Everybody wanted a gateway at that time?
Yeah, it was just, yes. Everybody wanted Windows, and nobody wanted the Mac at the time, And Steve Jobs, I don't think even had come back yet. And it was just kind of a dark time. So, but as a nerd kid, I loved Mac, and I thought it was neat. And so it just was really fun. And so I'm working the student job. And I get a call one day from somebody on campus called me, one of the offices, and they said, we have a business in town in Whitewater, and they're looking for some computer support. And I said, well, that I can't do that. I'm a student rep. I can only sell to the students and help the students. I work for Apple. Well, they're just, they keep calling. So I called them back, and they said, you have to come out here. We just need to meet with you. So I said, well, I'll come out and meet, but I can't work for you. I work for Apple. So I go out and meet with these people, and they're in the woods. They own an 80-acre retreat center in the woods. At the time, they were kind of like a business coaching firm, almost like a Tony Robbins business coaching firm. Okay. And just the most fascinating thing. They did zip lining and fire walks and all this stuff in the woods. And I got out there, and I was just mesmerized by it. And I said to them, they were telling me what they needed done. And I said, well, this stuff is really simple, but I just can't work for you. I work for Apple. And so I think I left the meeting, and I went back, and I just kind of pondered it for a while, and I was going to find them like one of my friends or something that could go do it. And then I thought,
remind me how they found you. I'm sorry, I missed
that. They called campus, and they said, we need some Apple support. And people on campus knew that I was like the Apple guy.
I just wanted to make sure I got that. Yeah.
So I get basically referred in, and I call them back finally. They kept calling, so they kept calling me. Hey, that'd be like the next morning. I was just there a couple hours, earlier the day before, and they're calling me. Well, are you going to be able to come back here and come out here and help us? And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to come and help you this time. I don't even know if I don't know if it's a conflict of interest, and I'm high integrity. So it was like, I'm going to have to talk to my bosses at Apple who were out of Chicago. So it wasn't like easy to get a conversation with your boss at the time. And I said, well, I'll come out and help you for free. And if you need more stuff, let me know. So they called, oh no, we need you out here a couple days a week. I'm like, wait, what? So I worked it out with Apple. Apple was, and at the time, Apple was just disintegrating. So by the time I was kind of reaching out, my boss had been fired. My boss's boss had been fired. I didn't even know who to call to even ask for permission. And I was still getting a paycheck, but granted, it was cheap. It was not much. So I get out. I just kept going, and it's the company is called the Wright Foundation. They're a accredited university these days for transformational growth, and they're still a client of ours. So that was kind of where it all began. Is I got in there, and I just started doing anything. So I was the IT guy, but when the summer came up, so I'm in college, so summer comes up, and I'm living in Whitewater, and they would say like, hey, do you want to be the office manager? Sure. Do you want to plant the gardens? Sure. So I would literally be out there planting fields. I'd be doing the IT. I was just doing anything I could just to kind of, it was basically a job, but I worked as an independent contractor, and I did that for the first summer. And then the next summer I just decided, I said to them, you know what? I really love being here, and I hope that I can keep you as a client, but I want to see if I can get some other clients as well. And so I'm going to do IT only, and I'm not going to take on the other work. And we'll see where it goes. Well, it's done well. They're still a client of ours. We still handle their IT to this day. They're headquartered in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and they have a remote campus in Chicago. So we're still down there a significant amount, and that's kind of where it all started from.
And was that the start of your business then? That first?
It was. That was. So then in college, I had 3 roommates. It's just fun, bunch of guys hanging out, and we were having a good time at Whitewater, and so. I needed more space for the business. I had some product, and I needed to spread out. So I went and rented a studio apartment in the building next door to where we were living, and I didn't want to move there. I wanted to stay with my friends, so I just basically got the studio apartment to use as an office. And so I had this kind of, for my last 2 years of college, I had this little office. And then I just basically started going around town, and I just started doing IT it would be like the library, some grade schools, some businesses. I just kind of kept putting my name out there to try to get work. And, in the beginning, it's tough. It's like you're climbing a mountain with your hands and you're, scraping for anything you can find. But I was a college kid, so, it was beer money and tuition. And so, you didn't need a whole lot of money to survive, and it worked out.
And when you said when you were a kid, you just had an interest in business from a young age. What is that? What did business? Do you remember what business meant to you then? Because I'm trying to think about when I first had an inkling of what a business actually was. It was.
So my dad was a sales engineer, and he traveled around Wisconsin. He had a company car, put on 100,000 miles a year, and drove all around. And when I was a kid, he let me ride with him. Sometimes we'd be riding up north. Sometimes he'd just let me come around, and I'd be in the car, and I'd kind of, well, how does this work? And then I don't remember in what magazines, but as a kid, I remember I'd read a story about how some kid, nowadays you see them all the time, right? You see there's kids, there's internet and everything, and you've got YouTubers making piles of money, and it wasn't really the money that interested me as much as just the business side interested me. I remember I always wanted to play Office as a kid, so I always had notepads, and for Christmas I'd ask for a notepad with from the desk of Dave Stamm, right? Nice. And it was just like little goofy stuff that it was like the novelty of it or something just interested me. And so I still have that kind of interest, and it was just kind of exploring kind of where it would go from there. And I remember in college when I found the IT niche and they called me, and about a couple of months after I had gotten at least 3 clients, in my head, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is what I was looking for. Like, this is going to be my first start. And I'm feeling that kind of like, hey, at least I'm going to start here.
And how did you teach yourself how to code? Was that out of books that were in the library or some?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Now there's a lot of resources for coding. At the time, I think it was basic. And I had like a $50 computer my dad bought me from JCPenney's. It was like a TI 99 4A. And I'm really dating myself on this, but yeah, I think it was basically books. I think my parents had gotten me, this computer and a couple of books for Christmas, and probably figured it would sit in a dust pile, and I kind of glommed onto it and just started figuring out what to do with it.
And then so I'm really interested in when you were talking about Wheel and Sprocket, and then the Apple thing. Oh, actually, everything you've been talking about, but those things, your face sort of just lights up, and I'm thinking to myself, most kids at the time, sales is usually not something they get all, jazzed up about, right? It's usually like, how can I get a job where I don't draw any attention to myself or whatever. But you seem to have had, a love of it right away. And of course, sales is like the greatest thing. If you can sell and like doing it, you can become whatever you want to become, I think.
Yeah. And, I guess for me, even if you ask people that I work with, I'm probably not the best hunter. I'm probably laying sales out into different roles. I'm probably a better farmer account manager than I would be a hunter. And because I still have the shy side of me that's like, oh, rejection, that's bad. But I enjoy, and I really enjoy solving problems and getting to know clients well. And even back then, I remember at Wheel and Sprocket, my specialty was if a customer came into the store and they were angry or they were upset, right? Like, and granted, we didn't get many of those, but if someone came in and, I bought this bike and I got a flat tire on my second day out, right? And then they would be like, okay, Dave, you're up. And they'd push me up, and it was like, I love that part. It was fun. It was like, I know I can turn it around, like my mom always taught me, kill them with kindness. And so I just kind of go in there and, just, okay, hey, just what happened? Sure, we're going to stand by. And we always stood by the product. It was more just that, people are frustrated.
Yeah.
So, and with IT, I always say it's humans and technology. There's going to be problems and people are going to get frustrated. So we get a whole lot more problems in the IT world than we did in the bike world.
Yeah, I'll bet it is, though, a lot like that. I just bought this thing and it stopped working.
Yes, and IT people are the personification.
It wasn't that I ran over a nail. That wasn't what happened.
Yes,
it was,
right? Oh, yeah.
It was something you did.
Totally. That nail, right? It must have magnetized to the tire.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
This defective tire. Yes. We're as IT guys, we are the personification of IT problems, right? So we're either the heroes or the enemy, depends how the day's going. So.
And as the Apple rep, Dave, what kind of circle did you travel? Because you're in school and you're going to other schools, right? To do that job? Is that what I heard? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, and Apple was just kind of disorganized at the time. So what happened was Apple basically hired me just to be on my own campus and take orders. So if students if they had labs ordered, and so I kept reaching out And so what happened is our school came and said, hey, we would buy a couple hundred Macs, but we don't have anybody that can help integrate them. And I was like, well, I know how to do that, but I'm only a marketing kid. So I had to ask my boss if it was okay if I technically helped him. And she's like, well, I don't know. We've never done this before, but if you can help, if getting the sale means you're going to help him, I don't see why we wouldn't pay you for that. So my boss was so cool at the time. And just basically, and probably I was some kid she's out of a Chicago regional office and I'm some kid calling her from campus and she's probably like, whatever, go do whatever you want. And so they kind of let me have free reign with it. And then this new model worked where we would tell him. So they kind of made this role for me where I would travel to different campuses in Wisconsin. I think I went to Minnesota, Iowa once or twice. And I would basically just kind of talk to him about how they could integrate the labs at the time, which now you have Mac labs, but at the time it wasn't as popular. It was a harder sell. So we'd sell it by showing them how they could configure it and maintain it and things like that. And that was kind of the beginning.
Well, you said you were dating yourself. I'm going to date myself. When I was in college, a computer lab was not something it wasn't Mac or Windows, just a computer lab, which I never walked into, by the way, the whole time I was there, which I kind of regret, was this thing in the basement of one of the buildings that nobody really knew what was going on there except probably people like you. It was a small group. And it was just not, it was like, I don't know if people thought it was, I didn't know what to think of it. I didn't, I was just too dumb, I guess, at the time to understand. But yeah, it was a real small thing, and nobody had a computer of their own when I was. No one in my fraternity. One guy had a typewriter, and you pay him to type your papers.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't probably too much more farther advanced than that. And it was even computer labs when I was there weren't super popular. I was there a lot because I was going to school for computers, so I had to take classes and be in the lab a lot. And granted, I was like hiding this nerd side of me. The Thursday night party side would come out, and we would never talk about those computer labs. But then, on Monday night, I'd be back in the lab. So it was like kind of a mix of both personalities rolled together, which is still true to this day.
And did you really feel nerdy, Dave, or was that sort of what the perception that you had of what everybody else thought?
I did as a kid, younger kid. So I was in grade school. I would get called on the PA system. And they would say, Dave Stamm, could you come to the office? Well, I wasn't getting called to the office to get in trouble. Their computers were down and they needed me to help fix them. And it was this kind of awkwardness. So in grade school, I did have that sense of I should be careful. And when I got to high school, I reinvented myself a little bit so that it wasn't showing through. And I knew enough to cover it up. These days, nerds rule the world. I mean, coders are the hot thing, and it's so great because it's how it should be. But as a kid, I remember needing to telling myself I should kind of hide that, and it worked. I could be both, and it all worked out fine. And it's an easier life now.
I get the feeling, and I just told our youngest daughter this. I get the feeling now that if you don't know how to code, it's like not knowing how to tie your shoes. Almost, you should.
Yep.
Right. I mean,
I think it's just the logic of it. It's even if you never use it,
right? Even
it's just the logic of understanding it.
Right. Right. Because when you're talking through any type of system in any business, it's basically a code.
Yes. It's just logic. And it depends on what you are. If you're a restaurant and you have a recipe, it's really your code, right? I mean, it's just the logic of how you think things through.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of us do that anyway, even if we don't know how to code, and you might never use coding, but it's just good logic.
And you mentioned that you were responsible. You're always responsible. Where do you think that came from?
So I would say my parents. As a kid, I'm an older brother of only two, so I have a younger sister, and it was just me and her. And as a kid, I just always remember worrying about things, and I guess being responsible. Now that I look back at it, it was just how I was built, and work ethic was there. It was you'd wake up on Saturday mornings, and my mom had a list of to-dos for my dad and myself, and we would bust those out and spend the whole day doing it. I mean, and it would be anything from cleaning the windows to painting the house to we didn't get allowance. We was just, it was the dues for being part of the family. We didn't know better. And
that
so
was earning your keep.
Yeah, just didn't know better. And so working, crazy hours and just doing whatever it takes to do it is how I live life now. And I still work crazy hours and like I did when I was a kid. And it was, I guess, just my parents kind of instilled that in me, and I thought it was normal.
So when let's fast forward a little bit to the very beginnings of your business. So did you incorporate or organize when you were in college? So you had the right foundation, and you were adding some other. First of all, actually, before I go there, and I don't know what it was like when you graduated. When I graduated, the big thing was getting a job, right? So you had a job that you liked, but you chose instead to say, hey, you know what? I want to work for multiple companies. I don't want to just work.
Well, yes and no. Okay. I think my dad might have chosen this for me. And,
okay.
So he's probably laughing and listening at this point. But I had 2 offers out of high school. And college was a maybe, right? It was my parents wanted me to go, but when I went to high school, I knew a bunch of people who weren't going. I knew a bunch of people who were going, so it wasn't that everybody was moving on to college. And I was sure I was going to take this. I was either going to stay at Wheel & Sprocket or take this other role. And my dad is like, "What? There's no way this is happening. If you're going to stay under my roof," I still remember my rent was going to be $550 a month. I needed to get my own car, and he got it to the point, I'm sure he had figured it all out. And so I'm pretty logical. I remember taking out my little legal pad and writing all the numbers down, and I was like, this doesn't work. I'm like, you can't charge me $550. Like, even if I get this job, I'm going to work all the time and have no money. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, he got it, but I didn't to get it. And so then I was like, I guess I'm going to have to go to college. And that, just kind of went from there. And then from college, it was after then, yeah, I knew in college, I started picking up some clients in college, and I think I graduated Whitewater having about 40 clients active.
40?
Yeah, it was small. I mean, some of them were like, 2-person law firms and a library. It wasn't like major companies, but I had about 40 active clients who I was working. And I was really on the fence if I should. I was getting out with an IT degree, which at the time was a big deal. IT was in high demand in the late 90s. And so I was really on the fence. I was getting advice that I should go take a job at a bigger company and learn about life and learn about business. But I kept saying, look, I get it, and I might not make it. But if I try it now, I have nothing to lose. Like, my parents were probably figuring after college I was going to move back home for a year or two anyway while I sorted my life out.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, I'm gonna do this. I have 40 clients, and let's see if I can make it go. And if I can't, then I'm gonna go to Plan B, and I'll reorganize my life. And I didn't have any. I was able to luckily I was able to use the work I had been doing in college to pay off my student debt. So I was graduating with college with no debt, which was really great.
Yeah.
And then I just needed to kind of figure out what to do. And so I thought, I'm going to take a shot on it.
So before I get into, where your business and your life went from there, you just kind of opened the door there. So I'm gonna walk into it. You had mentioned that for yourself, you were kind of on the fence between going to work and going to college. Your dad helped you with that logic of that decision. Nowadays, that makes me sound like I'm freaking old. So in today's world, that seems like something that's making a comeback. You see, we've got a very distributed work possibility, at least. You can work from anywhere, as we're finding through the pandemic. You can definitely work from anywhere. College is very, very expensive now, and there's sort of this trapped cycle where the government will back loans, so it's easy for people to borrow, and in colleges and universities can keep raising their rates because the loans keep coming. And the short question really is, it costs a lot of money and often results in a lot of debt to go to college now. Certainly, it's got to be multiple times what it was when you were there or when I was there. And with all these opportunities, particularly computer-related opportunities, software opportunities, how do you feel about college? Like for your kids, how do you feel about college, the necessity of it versus the necessity of it and or the risk reward of going or not going?
It's a great question, and I think right now, and
took me long enough to ask it.
No, we're 6 months into the pandemic, and we're trying to, I think we're all trying to figure out how to navigate going forward. And I was, my kids are in 8th grade right now. I have twins, but if I was, if I was thinking that they were about to head into college, it would be even more important to me to try to figure it out. I think that we're going to see a big change in education as well, right? I think that now telling someone they could take a gap year wouldn't be so crazy, because we're all trying to figure out, is this the new normal or the next normal, or are we in the future, or is this a temporary setback? And I think that that's a possibility. I think that I think that the real expensive colleges are going to have a really hard time, because I think so much of those college life is the networking and the different people that you meet there. And so now, if everything's virtual, I mean, you're going to see the state schools, I think, provide a lot more value than you're going to see some of these really expensive out-of-state schools providing. And now that you don't get that college life, why would you, if you're going to learn roughly the same amount of information, are you going to spend, 20, whatever the cheap, $20,000 a year, you're going to spend, 60,000+ a year. And,
Right.
and how do you, sort out the value you're getting from that? So, and then, also, if everything goes virtual and stays, a lot of great learning is still virtual, maybe people can pick up the courses they need and not just take all the general set of everything that we would have taken as a more traditional college life.
Right. Or you can, good point. You mentioned the gap year. I hadn't even thought of that, but basically now we're learning that you can take a gap and still be in college, because, you're right. The whole value proposition of in-person learning, the socialization, the contacts, and all of that stuff is being eroded just a little bit every day. That doesn't, because the education part of it, evidently everyone's still able to deliver, right? Because they're still charging you the same amount to go to school virtually as they are to go. Maybe you don't pay room and board, but tuition is typically. And I don't think it's been significantly discounted.
No, I've heard it's not been discounted much at all. But will that stay? Because I think people are going to, at least from the expensive schools, probably revolt and find some better value.
Right.
So,
and you can custom design your school. That's what I'm thinking like now. So that's what I do now as an older person, right? I still go to school, but it's a school that I design.
You're choosing
custom design for me. And now it seems like you can custom design at a much younger age, and maybe.
And I think for me, college was two parts too, right? It was the education of the classroom learning and all that, but it was also the learning how to live as a person, like as an adult. I wasn't under my parents' roof.
Yeah.
And you teach yourself things like doing laundry and cooking food that,
that's a good point.
And socialization and all this stuff that you're now missing. And so I sure hope that, I hope we don't move to a fully virtual school. I think having that as an option, kind of like working from home, right? I think all those people who thought they wanted to work from home now are at home and going, oh man, I can't wait to get back to the office. And everyone that, and then there's some people who do work well from home. And so I think companies had to learn how to allow the employees to work from home. But employees who thought it would be amazing to work from home thought, you know what, it's actually kind of fun to go to the office. And so you have this mix. And hopefully education in the future is a mix too, because I still think that in college you still get such an understanding and a development of what life is at that level.
And I think you're right about that. It's if it was easy for everybody to work at home, I know that people say, well, it's because of broadband and all the stuff that's fast internet, all the stuff that's available now. That's why it works so well. But it's not why it works so well. People are designed to, I think, they're designed to operate in a community at work, and there are a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, very few people who can be on their own all the time and not only be productive, but be part of the team too. It's a very, you spend millions and millions of dollars building culture in your business, right? And then you're saying, this is where I think business leaders right now are in a little bit of a trap, because they've spent all of this money and all of this time talking about culture and its importance and how, collaboration and all that stuff. And then they're having to convince themselves and say that this is working fine this way, So someday it seems like there's a reconciliation that has to come from that. And I don't think it's going to be this works as great as I'm saying it works. I'm talking myself into this works well because I don't have an option.
Another choice, right? Yeah, I know the pandemic has been teaching us so much. I think it's that everybody still wants connection, right? And even, what we've been watching with some of our clients and our friends and business owner peers and things, and just everybody's everybody's affected differently by this pandemic, and some people are doing better, right? Whatever they're offering is more in need now than ever. And some people are unfazed. It's like whatever they were doing is basically unfazed by what's happening. And then you've got, unfortunately, the rest. And it's like they're either substantially down or their business is basically, non-existent during the pandemic because of, whatever it is, hospitality or whatever the case may be. And so we're seeing all this
regulations, shutdowns. Yeah,
right. And so just kind of navigating all this has been an interesting path as well.
Well, I know, and then we'll get back to your story, but I know that I just read that Zoom is hosting 300 million meetings a day.
Zoom came out with their earnings today, and I guess they were quadruple last year's same quarter, and their stock is up like 35 to 40% today.
But 300 million meetings a day. Think about that. And for most of us, I think, prior to the pandemic, if you were asked to be on a Zoom call, it was like, oh, Jesus. I'm going to call in because I don't want to be seen. I know that's how
Absolutely.
I was. Zoom me. Can't we just talk? And now another lesson that you've learned, you can actually collaborate with people online, and their platform is certainly proving that there's a need and a desire for it. I just wonder how long that can be the only way.
In half of our business, we work on events in the around the world, and so we have always been on conference calls and Zooms and WebExes and all the GoToMeetings and all that type of stuff. And so what we found is almost no one ever turned on the video, right? You log in to GoToMeeting, but everyone used it. They would show their PowerPoints if there was one, but everyone used it like a conference bridge. We all just called in and talked on it. Well, now that the pandemic is here, everybody wants this connection, and so almost always people have their cameras on, and you do get a deeper connection when you're looking at someone across, a video signal than before. And it's been really interesting. I think part of it also is before people thought it all had to be professional. Like if I was going to be on a call and I was going to show video, I better be in a suit, or dressed up or whatever. And now there's all this new sense of authenticity. It's like, if you're watching the backdrop, of my house, or I have pets or kids in the way, or things are chaotic, that's okay. You know, and I feel like there's this new sense of whatever your background is, it's okay.
Yeah, as long as you're trying.
Yes.
Like if you're not, if you're not trying, and like you said with the video, now it's like if you show up and it's just your face on there, people are like, "What's going on with that person? Why aren't they?"
Yeah, like how come? Right, what must be a real bad day after what are they up to? Yeah, I was on one this morning where everybody was on video but one person, and it was like,
you do
wonder what they're up to.
Yeah.
But then you forget that person can still see you. So then they were on there. They made a comment, and I was like, oh yeah, so you have yours off, but we have all our sharing.
I will plug video conferencing. As for us has been a tremendous benefit because right when the pandemic started, we had been doing for a long time a 5-minute call every morning. State of the business. Let's talk about it. Talk about culture. Talk about whatever. 5 minutes. That's it, right? And it was just on the phone. And we switched to Microsoft Teams right when this started to get weird, and it just. It really changed the dynamic of the whole call. Instead of people just being like, who knows what they were, maybe they weren't even paying attention or whatever. Now, just seeing everybody's face in the beginning of the day and talking about some important stuff, or, maybe it's not that important, but it's keeping everybody connected. It's been a real benefit for us, I have to say.
Same here. We upgraded even, we're an IT company, right? And we even upgraded our rooms so that we would use video for everything. And we just assume that people are going to be working remote. And so we use Teams and Zoom both, depending on what we're up to. We use it across, and we have them spread out throughout the business. So we have a morning huddle, kind of like you do every morning. Yeah. We have account management, service team, and they huddle up and talk about, was there any challenges from the day before that didn't get handled for clients, or what's on the projects for today? Is anybody out sick, or is there anything going on? And it works out great. But like you're saying, we did phone, and people would cancel all the time when we were doing phone. Like, oh, I have another commitment. And we always said, if you have a client commitment, that trumps the huddle. So if you have and now that we do video, more people show up to the huddle than ever before. It's just I think people feel more connected.
It's been a great way too for us to, because our goal of doing it was, hey, we want to keep everybody employed, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know what's going to happen to our clients. So let's get together every morning, first thing we're going to do is talk about how we did yesterday and how it looks like we're going to do today, so that we can say, we can, live up to that commitment to, hey, we want to keep everybody working. And then I think it just got everybody, once they rallied around that, then it got the ability to make progress on our goals accelerated, because everyone could hear every morning about why what they're doing is so important to keeping all of us employed.
Yeah, nobody wants to get on the Huddle and say they didn't finish their thing.
Yeah, right.
Even myself, right? I don't want to
Right.
jump on my Huddle and embarrass myself to my team and say I didn't do the 2 things I told you
Yeah.
guys yesterday morning I was going to do.
Right. So 40 clients when you graduate from UW Whitewater, and where did you go from there?
So soon after that, I finally incorporated and decided I was going to hang the shingle. And the IT company is called Stamm Technologies. And people ask me, "Oh, is it? Did you name it after yourself because you've got a huge ego?" And actually, no, it was quite the opposite. I kept trying names out, and it was just something that wasn't important to me. I was so busy grinding away at helping the clients. My first business name was Computer Solutions, and then I think someone sent me a cease and desist because someone in Missouri had that name, and I kept trying out, every computer thing I could think of, and it kept getting shut down. So I finally called it Stamm Technologies, just so I knew that no one was going to steal it. Like I was like, no one's going to come after me.
It's kind of cool, actually, too, Dave, because Stamm Technologies doesn't sound like somebody's name.
Well, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and it does. It at least
It's like Stamm. I wonder what that stands for.
Right. I appreciate that. It was just
cool.
something, it was just some way, people will ask me like, why did you name it after yourself? And it was not at all because I had a big ego and I wanted to grow this over, I hadn't thought about it that way. I just didn't, I was almost frustrated with I was just trying to get the work done. And this thing I get a letter in the mail every quarter saying, by the way, you're using our name, please cease and desist. And I was like, I had gotten at least 3. And finally I said, I'm just going to name it after myself and I'll sort it out later. And of course I never did. And it's still here.
I used to draw pictures when I was a kid of trucks, because I've been into trucks my whole life. So I draw pictures of trucks with my name on the side, like in block letters.
That's awesome.
And then when it came time to actually name the company, I didn't have the guts to go through with that. And I think it was actually a good thing for me, because there's no way with my last name, Malatesta, that people would be like, oh, that's not a name. That's, so anyway, sorry, but it made me think of, and it is kind of funny. You never talk about that, do you? Like how going through possible names of companies. Like nobody talks about, oh yeah, my company name is this, and this was the 17th choice because we went through all of these cease and desist orders or whatever, and it's not
and I
easy.
almost wish that maybe I had given it more thought. I probably, if I had to paint my name on the side of a truck at that point in my life, I would have definitely spent a little more time thinking about something more original. But at the time, I just needed a simple business card to get myself through business, and it was pretty easy going. So we had the 40 clients, and then it was growing it from there. So in the beginning, I was hiring my college IT friends who were in courses with me to help me, and that worked out pretty well. Still talk to a number of them to this day, and then just kind of started hiring on the team and looking for people that fit the personality. And for us, it's I say that a lot of companies are good at either service or sales, and the best ones are good at both. We're a service company. We know how to keep a client happy, and at least we think we do. We really, really, really try to serve the client. We're still learning how to become a great sales organization. We do some sales, but that's where we need some help. But service is our thing. And even back then, it was I kind of have a pleaser personality, and so it was always kind of natural to me. And so it was really just finding people who now we've figured out what we call it, and we call it whatever it takes. So whatever it takes is our business mantra that we live by. We hire by it, and we always talk about all the things, little, big, and small, that we handle that are doing whatever it takes for our customers, for our coworkers, etc. But at the time we hadn't labeled it that, but that's what we were doing, and so it was hiring people that really had this attitude. My second client was actually back to the beginning of the story at Subway. So the guy who owned the Subway also owned an audiovisual production company for events worldwide. And so his biggest client at the time was Ted Turner. He basically had 2 amazing clients. He had more, but he had Ted Turner, so he had CNN and that whole group, and he had MTV and that group. And so he had some amazingly big clients, and that was his day job. And he had the Subway basically just as a second business. His wife kind of ran that. And for the short, year and a half, 2 years I was there, I helped him with that. But I went back to them, and I knew he had grown this event business. And I said, hey, I'm doing this IT thing. And he said, well, yeah, I need your help. So when I got there, they actually had grown way beyond what I had realized since I had been working for them when I was 14. And they had 30-some staff spread out between 3 offices in the United States. Milwaukee was headquarters, thankfully, which is how I connected with him. And he wasn't a tech guy, really. He knew his product. They did audiovisual production, but they didn't know computers. And so he let me come in and basically computerize the company, for lack of a better word. They just had typewriters. They might have had one computer for accounting, and that was it. So when I got there, it was kind of like, here's one of the Amex cards, and you're going to go with one of the employees, and you're going to go to the store, and you're going to buy everybody a computer. And it was awesome. They were just a great client for me, and that now has that really kind of that essence has become the second half of what we do these days. So.
Did you buy that business, or did you just learn from it and then start your own?
So yeah, there was a transitional path by which the business owner had some health concerns, unfortunately, and had to kind of shut down. And so it was really the employees the business would have been closed. And so he came to me and said, look, there's work to be had. There's some clients that need help. The employees need a home. And so we worked it out, and basically he approached me. It was like Christmas Eve of 2005. And unfortunately we were sitting at the time, and it's just a sad story. He was sitting in the hospital room where he was, and we were just talking it through. And so basically the day after Christmas, I showed up at this company, and I'd known them all because they had been one of my IT clients for years. So I knew the team, and I just said, hey, would you guys want to make the journey over, and we're going to start doing this over, at the office, and try building this back up. And it's worked. So I'm still working with some of the same people that came on in 2005, which has been just a blessing and a pleasure. And we've just built the team and built it up into a event technology company, and we're serving big clients around the world. Struggling a little bit in the pandemic.
Yeah, I was going to say event technology. Well, wait a second. Events aren't happening. What do you? So it's been interesting. So in my business journey, I call it I don't have a real MBA, but I call it my expensive MBA. And my MBA of life is, I know a bunch of us have gotten our own versions of. Sure.
And mine was, so initially in the events business, there's been a few, and I didn't have much of a foothold in the events world in 9/11, but we did have some. So 9/11 happened and shut events down for a couple of years, and we were affected. I at least could see I wasn't big enough to have a major effect on me at that point, but I could see the lessons kind of coming out of that, and that this could happen, like, oh my gosh, something like this that no one could control, this terrible act at 9/11 that could cause, this business disruption could happen. So I need to be ready that this could happen to me, and something could happen I can't control, and that it could really, really devastate us. And then, so kind of take over this event side in effectively January 1st of 2006. We did a project for Johnson. Our first project out of the gate was a project for Johnson Controls. And that was our first one. And then, so what happened was I was working crazy hours. I was working 100+ hour weeks on the IT business. I was a little too deep in the weeds as us business owners, you got to work on the business, is not in the business. Well, I was way deep in the business.
You were way deep. Yeah.
I wasn't working on it at all. And now I just kind of effectively, nearly doubled my size with this new venture, which was close to us. We knew the clients. It made a lot of sense. We knew the clients. We knew the staff. The teams had worked together. It made a lot of sense to do it. But it just was, I didn't know what to do. And so I had gone to one of their former employees who was really kind of grew the business for the former owner, had parted ways with the firm. And I went back to him and I had reached out and said, would you come on board? And he came into me and said, I would, but I want some minority ownership in the venture to do it, because I'll grow it for you like I did for him. But this time I want a little stake in the game, which made sense because I had seen what he had done there. And he was a dynamo. When we took over, it was dollar-wise, I don't know, it was somewhere between $500,000 to $700,000 probably a business in what we were kind of, what was out there. And within about within about a year and a half, we got up to about $3 million plus in revenue, which was for at that size, it's pretty fast growth. And it was great. It was like every big Fortune 1000 we talked to get some project from had worked for us. So it was just and the economy was up and things were booming at that time. And so that was all great. So we're trucking along, and he's kind of running events and I'm running IT. He didn't really have anything to do with IT. I had that one, but we were kind of in this event business together in the same office building. We tried to separate the teams as best we could. We ran them as separate companies, and we would meet for breakfast every Thursday and basically do our strategy session. And so it was interesting. It was my experiment to see if I could own a business that I wasn't deep in the weeds on. And so truthfully, that's kind of what it was at the time. And so, but unfortunately, I had a big major problem, and that is he ended up embezzling a sizable amount of money from the business. And so I uncovered this over a breakfast conversation in
with him
2007. Well, he told me that we were a little tight for funds, and I was asking if I could borrow $50,000 over to make payroll the next day, which was just odd because we just came out of our busy season and it didn't make sense to me. And so I asked him a bunch of questions and he couldn't really answer it. And so in my heart, I didn't expect anything wrong. I actually just thought he had gotten sloppy with it, and it was nervous, but I wasn't panicked. And so I went to the office and I started looking through stuff myself, and then I called my CPA and I said, "Hey, I'm a little nervous about this." And again, not thinking of anything malicious. I was just thinking, "Hey, he just was busy." And we were growing like a mile a minute and we didn't have much staff, and he's wearing 7 hats. And I said, he was focused on the client and we didn't focus on the money, and we probably screwed up. And I just want to make sure that I don't want to find out tomorrow I need to put in $300,000 that I don't have, but I do have 50 and I'll move it over to make payroll, but I got to figure out what's going on.
Right.
So my CPA spends a couple quick hours going through it, and he said, I'll do a deep dive, but he calls me a couple hours in on the day after we had this conversation. He says, "Well, I need, there's a weird check. There's a check that's made out to one company, but the address is for another company." And he said, it's just odd. He said, "Call the bank and get a canceled check so we can record it properly in the accounting system to whatever vendor it should be from." So I call the bank, and the bank says, "Oh yeah, I'll find it for you. We'll call you when we find the check." So they call me back an hour later and they say, "Well, why don't you walk over to the fax machine? We're going to fax it to you." I said, "Okay." So the check comes through, and as the check is coming off the fax machine, I pick it up, and the payee is his name, and it was the same amount and the same check number. And so I had that that sinking feeling when you get some really bad news that you feel like that warm feeling that I just had that like panic, like, oh my gosh, I know what's going on, and then I was worried. But we didn't see all the other accounting at the time. With an hour or two glance matched up, and so I think the check was for $11,500. And so I just decided to, confront him and say, "Hey, look, I found this out." And, and so he admitted to it and said, "Yeah, I'm really sorry." And I said, "Well, what else don't I know about?" And he says, "Well, what do you?"
What do you mean? I'm really sorry. So he wrote a check to a fake company name.
He wrote a check basically to himself. So what he was doing is he had check signing authority, right? And so, he would fold in a business check. There's the top and the 2 stubs.
Yeah.
He would fold the stub down, must have taped it to some white paper, printed the check in QuickBooks through the printer. The stubs would be correct, but the top would never print because he folded it down. And then he would rip the top off and write the check out to himself for the same dollar amount that the stubs were for. So all of our filings were actually accurate. But
so the money was accurate.
The money was accurate. Who it
was paid to was
but we
not.
Never paid anyone. And so what happened was he's the most charismatic guy. We were really great friends at the time, and he was super charismatic, and everybody loved him. And so our vendors would call and say, "Hey, we're way behind." And he would just give them a story. "Oh, Dave's just, this is our first year in business or second year in business, and we're just in a little cash crunch. We'll get you. Don't worry. We're good for it. You've known Dave for 8 years. It'll be totally fine." And no one knew all this was happening, obviously, except for him. And so, at any rate, it was it gave me a lot of lessons. So within a couple of weeks, it takes us some time. We figure out that we are the end of the story, I guess, is basically that we find out that we're over $1 million in debt, and that a lot of it comes from the embezzlement itself, and then a lot of it came from other pieces.
Did you have to borrow like line of credit to fund the business, and you didn't realize that it was because of...
So we had a bank loan that, so he had run, so the money primarily was spent on high-end hookers and fancy cars. If you're going to go out big, I'm writing a Dateline story of the week here for you, Mike. And it was literally what the money was being spent on at the time. And what happened was he just wasn't paying any of the vendors, but he also wasn't paying payroll taxes and everything. So what happened was it took me about 5-6 years to get out of the hole with the team, and my team was great. Everybody stayed.
Wait. Before you get into that.
All right. Yes.
How do you tell us about the conversation where you're like, hey, dude, this looks like you've stolen $1 million? Because I'm assuming in the 2 weeks or whatever you said it took he was still working because you thought, oh, this is maybe just a one-off.
Yep.
Thing.
So at the time he said to me, hey.
I said he was sorry. I mean.
So it did get a little crazy. Right. I said I was sorry. I'll pay it back. So it did get a little crazier. So we uncovered this $11,500 check, and that day I confront him. I asked him to stay after. We stayed after 5, and it was just me and him. And there might have been, I don't remember. He was pretty emotional about it, and he was, I'm so sorry I did this to you. I'm in a bad spot at home. With my kids and I'm in a really bad spot. I should have talked to you about this. And I said, well, what else is there? He said, no, this is it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, are you going to turn me in, or, am I going to go to jail? And at the time he has honestly, I know some of the clients, but he has the majority of the relationships. He's grown it up. He's hired most of the staff. Like it's a big thing. Like, what am I going to do? But then the integrity and the breach of trust and all this, and I just said to him, I said, I truly don't know. I said, I'm going to go home tonight and think on this. I'm going to come back tomorrow and let's just meet in the morning, tomorrow morning, and talk through this. Okay. I'm not going to pull a nuclear option here. Let me just chew on this tonight and come back and let's talk tomorrow and try to sort through this together. And I was trying to do what I thought was best for everybody. And so, I go home and I start looking through accounting, because now I figured out, my CPA and I figured out how he had how he did this. So unfortunately, I end that night, and I figure out that now my total's up to about 60-some thousand. And I know, like, oh boy.
60-some thousand.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm at 60. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. Like, I have to part ways with him. Now I can't, this isn't a one-time indiscretion that we could try to work through. Like, there's a hit now where we can see like this trail, and we know this has been happening for a period of time. And
plus, he lied to you.
Plus, yeah.
Straight up.
Totally. Because I had asked him, what else don't I know about, right? So we, it gotten a little crazy. So that morning I have a client meeting, and I just, have a meeting with a client, I should have rescheduled, but I promised the client I'd be there at 9 a.m. So I went to the 9 o'clock client meeting, and I'm in this meeting with the client, and my phone is going crazy, but I have it down on the table and I'm not looking at it. And so I'm leaving the client 10:30 in the morning, and they're maybe 5 minutes from my office, and I look at my phone and I've missed like 42 calls. Right. And I'm like, oh no, this is bad. Right. So I get in the car to drive to the office, and I call the office, and they're like, I don't honestly remember even who answered. And someone said, I can't believe this. I just can't believe you guys shut the business down. And I'm like, what? We shut the business down? What do you mean? And they're like, yeah, I just can't believe you shut the business down. And well, explain it to me. Well, our warehouse is empty. The vehicles are gone. And all the client files are gone, right? Or I should say the vehicle was gone. The vehicle was gone. The client files are gone. Like, what? So it turns out that after I confronted him, he obviously knew it was going to be much worse than what we thought. And so he came back to the office and gathered everything and figured he'd hold the cards, and I would be stuck because I didn't have any equipment. I wouldn't have any client files, and we'd be stuck. So that started kind of an interesting chase. I would calling the police, and the police would show up, and I'd say, well, here's what happened. Well, they look at me like, the warehouse is totally barren. There's nothing there. Like, granted, we were small at the time. We didn't have a big warehouse, but it's empty. And like, and they couldn't do anything. They said, well, I thought you said he was your partner. Yeah. Well, if he's owned part ownership, maybe he owns this stuff. I'm like, no, it's like minority ownership. Like, no. And the cops, they just couldn't do anything about it. So, so it got interesting. We just started making calls, and I started calling friends, and just got as much advice as I could. And we realized that we could try to trace the gear if we reached out to the Secret Service, because it went if the gear is transported over state lines, we could chase it that way. So we reached out to the FBI and the Secret Service, and they started tracking some of the stuff. We ended up finding him selling some of it on eBay. And then,
so he didn't try to keep the business going as his own. He didn't steal everything and be like, well, see ya. Now I'm,
I don't know what the intentions were, right?
Okay.
I don't know what this is all rolling out within like the day it all happened. So this is a Thursday night that I confront him on Thursday afternoon. He disappears with everything Thursday night. And Friday morning I come in, and this is when my staff's like, did you guys shut down and you just didn't tell us you were shutting down? And I'm like, everyone's calm down. I'm trying to work this out. What am I going to tell them? Like,
right.
It was just really odd. So it was all happening fresh. I think we were uncovering this stuff like that day, Friday night, Saturday. We were uncovering stuff. And at this time, I'm also have a little team that's formed. And we're trying to, between my CPA and our team, we were basically sorting through accounting. And at this point, we know that our total's over $300,000 and growing. So now I'm getting nervous, like, oh boy. And I figure out what's going on. So I know that I owe these people money. So when the dust settles, basically the dust settles, and I owe, one vendor $350,000. I owe American Express $350,000. I owe the bank $100,000. I mean, the numbers were just catastrophic. And at the time, I mean, between both companies, we're, maybe doing $4 or $5 million total at the time. So we were by no means, we weren't,
and you're coming up on $1 million that you owe.
Right. I owe, $1 to $2 million, and I don't know how this is all going to shake down.
Oh my gosh.
So, but we got through it.
How did you get through it initially? Like, I know you said when you saw that first check, you had this sort of feeling in your gut, but it just keeps coming, man. How did you?
So part of this, and this is the stuff for me that actually relates to the pandemic now, for not just myself and some of the things we're dealing with, but also like friends that I know going through, really their businesses are just devastated, right? And so what happened to me was I had always been really conservative, right? My dad taught me that you always live below your means, and I always did. I still don't have fancy cars, never had, too nice of stuff, and I just never was built that way. It was always live below your means. And so I got through college paying off my way, and I saved some money. Wasn't a lot, but I had saved a little bit of money. And so now all of a sudden I owe, I go from having a little money in the bank, and now I owe $1 million. And initially it was trauma. I was, and I'm an optimistic guy, and I was just angry. I was partly angry at him. I was just angry at myself. How could I have let this happen? I wasn't even as mad. People think I was upset with him. I was maybe, but I was so mad at myself how I could have let this happen and trusted so much and just not watched over things. And I couldn't keep beating up myself about it. And I just really, I had a couple of weeks, and probably the only time in my life where I would say I ever felt like somewhat depressed. And this isn't the onset of this happening, because I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I couldn't see how I could dig myself out of this hole, number one. Number two, anything I'd ever worked for and saved was gone, because he wasn't paying payroll taxes. So within a month, my office, they came in with badges to seize records, right? And my staff's like, what's going on? And they knew the story by then, but everything's being taken. And it was just, everything would be worse. You'd get a letter in the mail, and the IRS said you owe $100,000, and then you couldn't pay them because we're paying off someone else. And we'd owe them $400,000. We ended up paying the IRS like over $400,000 by the time we were done, because everything just kept coming together, or it just kept compounding. So for us though, it was, what I've really built out of that situation, and it has helped me, because right after this blew up, so this blows up on me summer of 2007, and then the recession of 2008, 2009 falls in right after that. And events got hit pretty hard in that recession as well. My IT business is always pretty resilient. So, but these situations just taught me resiliency, and the embezzlement was the biggest one. Kind of all the Dateline, novelty aside of it, it really just taught me that, you need a little time for grieving, right? If your business gets destroyed, call it a week or 2 weeks or whatever you need to make yourself okay, but grieve for a little while, be done with it, and then you just got to move forward.
You got to get
right?
off your ass
and then you got to,
something,
and
right?
Right. It's just more fun to move forward than it is to get stuck, right? And so, it's just, even with the pandemic and watching what, again, we're in the events business, there's nothing happening. The IT business is pretty unscathed, but, events were just decimated. And so we've come up with all these different pivots, but we just decided, for me, I decided for myself and my staff, we all decided together, let's just make this fun. if in the past we were a $10 million company doing events, and now we're a $1 million company doing virtual events, or whatever it ends up being, let's just make it fun. We're like a startup again. We're like back to the roots of beginning. And honestly, I've always said this to my team is, I don't think of my team as an event company or an IT company. I think of them as they're the best people I'd want to go to a business war with and fight it. And I just love working with them. And if I had to go do something else, if I sold the company and I wanted to go make pizzas or collect trash or, do whatever I was going to do, I'd want to take the same team or as much of the team as I could with me anyway. So why don't we just band together and see if we can figure out a pivot here or two? And that's, for the most part, that's what we've been up to. But I think the embezzlement taught not just me, but the team that we could pull it off. I mean, part of it for me was I just never thought I'd come out of it. Now, granted, the hole kept getting bigger and bigger, and on the embezzlement, it took us probably 5.5 to 6 years to completely become clean after that hole exploded. But I honestly, at the time when it all blew up, I didn't know that I ever would come out of it. So it taught me how to be more confident. It taught me how to move faster. I owed people money, and my thing to everybody I owed money to, some were small businesses like me, it would be like me owing myself money, a small company, and I owed them a lot of money. And so I just went to people and I said, look, I won't take a paycheck, but I'm just going to work, and we're going to work to pay you back in full. And we paid everybody back in full, and we just did what we could. And it wasn't about us, we had advisors telling us to go bankrupt, and it wasn't about that for me. It was like, how can I do that? Like, these are the people that I told we would make this work. Like, I can't do that. And the machine wasn't broken. What was nice about the embezzlement, which is a little different than the pandemic, is even though we owed a lot of money, the engine wasn't broke, right? If we look at the business as an engine to spit off cash, the engine was doing fine. So we had a good engine. We just had to grow the engine and move faster and lean it up so that we could spit off a lot of profit to be able to pay everybody back. And it took us 5 to 6 years to do that. The pandemic's a little harder because I have more confidence, so I'm more resilient than I was at that period. But now with the it's a little bit harder. You have to do some of the businesses out there, like our event business and some other things, have to do full on pivots because how do hotels and restaurants bring people back, right? It's just harder. So they're dealing with things that I don't even, it's just hard for some people.
So how did that's an incredible story that you shared, because on a lot of levels, but to just sum it up, a lot of people sort of have an idea that entrepreneurs work hard and they face challenges, and it's not, an upward slope all the time in a business, but getting kicked like that is not something that anyone who hasn't been kicked like that can appreciate how difficult it is. And most people are built to give up when it gets really difficult, particularly when they can say, well, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault. But, and you obviously didn't do that, which I commend you, and it's exceptionally inspiring. How did you got all this money's gone? He takes all the stuff. How do you stay in business? How do you get business if he took all your stuff, plus you have you owe all this money? How did
so basically what happened, and we would have to pick each other up. It was part of it was you say you dress the part until you get there, right? Act like the job
fake
that you want to try.
Fake
it till you make it, exactly. Like that really fit. And it wasn't faking, it was more of like along those lines, if you act if like things are normal, right? Like, again, I didn't need a lot of money to live on. So it was like, look, if we just act normal, right? Like if everyone's going to get their paychecks and we can all do the work we love doing, if we owe $1 million, like if we stop thinking about that, and it wouldn't be that we'd stop, because there was a number of us that were involved in like, organizing, how we would always be tracking it. Right. So, we would be tracking what we owed who. When we'd be celebrating, we'd pay off maybe we owed someone $250,000 and it took us like 2 or 3 years, and we'd pay it off and we'd be like, oh my gosh, we didn't have any big celebrations because we still owed other people and we didn't have any money to spend. But it was kind of that theory. I was like, for myself, I get up in the morning and I just tell myself, like, you know what? I'm an optimistic guy. I love life. And if I don't let this get to me and I just act normal, maybe life will be normal. And honestly, that's what worked. That's what it was. And it's part of it though, is I think even watching people dealing with the pandemic now and what I remember back then and what we're even going through on our own and what I felt like in March when this kind of hit and I knew the events would get crushed is like, you have to let whatever you lose, you just have to let go of it quickly, right? Like it's not fair, right? It might, now for me, part of it is that on the embezzlement, I blamed myself significantly. I really felt like it was more of my fault than his fault. And so I really felt a lot of personal guilt and blame over that situation, even just to myself. But I think part of it is you just have to realize what you lost and just move forward fast. Probably resiliency is, I guess, the best word. Because if I lately what's happened, I talked to someone last week and who had a business and I said, hey, how's it going? What are you guys up to? And he said, oh no, I let everyone go. I just shut the business down. I said, what? It's somebody not local. It's an out-of-state company that I'm friends with. And I said, he said, yeah. He said, if the world rebounds, it's also an event company. He said, I'm going to bring everybody back. Well, I mean, we've been, 6 months almost now. We're coming up a couple of weeks from being 6 months of where the pandemic hit. And I said, I know his clients a bit, not well, but I know who they are and I know what he does for them. And it's not unlike what we do for our event clients. And I said, well, here's what we've been up to. And it's actually been working for us. And, again, it's nowhere near where we were before, but we'll build it up. And whether the old normal comes back or this is the new normal, I don't know, but we're going to make it work either way. And and granted, he's older and I think, he wanted to retire anyway. So for him, it was like maybe a natural shutdown point, but it just struck me as like, he's not the first person I've talked to who just, part of it is like, what if it doesn't come back? Like, what if for some of us dealing with businesses who were drastically affected, what if this is the new normal or the next normal is the modified version? What do we all do? And it's been fun. It's been so fun to watch other people pivot. Our clients, some of the restaurants doing the, all the outdoor stuff and the getting super creative about it. I have really enjoyed watching people's pivots and reading about it and watching the resiliency. But I guess that my one piece out of this, and sorry, a long ramble, is just more of, sometimes if you lose something and you once you tell yourself in your common sense part of your brain, like, this isn't going to be coming back soon. I feel like the faster you can let it go and just get over it and move forward with something new, even if it wasn't fair, we didn't cause this pandemic, but what are we going to do? We're all dealing with it. And the one thing is it's happening to everybody across the world. So
yeah, you can wallow in what's unfair about it, or you can figure out what to do about it.
And how do we learn and find there's new opportunities? So some people are thriving right now. It just all depends on what you're up to and just adapting and realizing now that this could happen to us again. Like even if the world, we get kind of a version of the old normal back, well, now we all know a global pandemic is possible, right? Yeah, so now what do we do? We have to plan for it. So
how do you trust people now?
That was never a big issue for me. People have asked me that a lot. Like, do you trust people? And you'll never, and I don't know. I've always I'm not built that way. I mean, I probably leaves me open to future issues maybe, but I've always been trusting and I never looked at it that way. And I look at it as for me, it was a flawed process. We were moving too fast. We were too small. I was too inexperienced at the time. And I should have had a better process. We could have easily trapped any of this in a process. Maybe he even, we were figuring that what happened was he probably tried, as they say, most people that embezzle do, they test it somehow and they test you. And if you don't catch the test, then they test it a little more and then they keep moving on. And that's basically what was happening. And maybe we wouldn't even gotten him to be that point. Maybe he'd still be on growing the business if, and again, who knows? I just speculating, but it's we could have fixed it. And so just a little better processes, and that's would have fixed it, and a little more oversight. And it's just, I realized I was too deep in the weeds and I needed to get on the business more than I was at the time.
And how did you handle the partnership? I mean, so he steals this money. He's still a minority owner of your company, which kind of complicates matters. So where did it all end up, that part?
Yeah. I had, so it's interesting. I didn't know what would happen at the time. And I had an attorney, Milwaukee attorney, Dayton Hansen, who's just a phenomenal guy, super high integrity, and he's primarily a bankruptcy attorney. And he got referred to me. I don't actually remember by whom at the time. And I still talk to Dayton now. He's just a great guy. And he I hired him basically to keep me out of bankruptcy. And I said, you're a bankruptcy attorney, and I don't want to go down that road. I just don't like it. I understand why it exists and why you might need it, but I did not want to have it. I didn't want to do it. And he really forged the path, and he knew things that I just wouldn't have known at that time. He said to me the same thing. He said, well, to move forward, you're going to have to get him out of the ownership. And not only that, but we don't know what we don't know. And we need to spin down this business entity, and we need to form a new entity, and we need to go back to him and get him to waive his rights to the old entity. And he knew all this stuff, and he got me honestly navigated the legal course for me to get through that stuff. And it was actually, it's way easier than I would have expected. But what you don't know seems difficult until you know it. So having been on the other side of it now, the process is actually pretty straightforward, but when you don't know it, it's not.
So you must believe that you can deal with anything now. I mean, if you've been through something like that, plus, the sort of tail end of 9/11, and then this, not 9/11, the Great Recession.
Yep.
And now maybe the next depression, who knows?
Right, we don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sure, I have more confidence for sure than I would have then. And for now, I guess for me, and maybe it's having a little bit more experience to get with these things that gives you the confidence. I don't know how, hey, I could lose everything, but I would, it sounds bad, but I would try to have some fun in the process of rebuilding, right? I think life is cycles, business is cycles, right? We see things up and down, and economies are cycles, and I think life is somewhat of a series of cycles. And so you take the ups and the downs as you can, but you just have to remember when you're in the downs that it's going to be on the ups again eventually. So it gives you hope that, and that's, if it's a rough go for a while or even a long while, you just have to stay the course, I think even today you see so many small businesses start up and they just get frustrated right away and they shut down. And oh my gosh, I think this is my 20th year incorporated this year. What a year for it. We were going to have a big party, Mike. Hopefully I would have seen you there. But now, we don't know if we're going to do something virtual or just wait till next year to celebrate. I don't know. But I think the first 10 years I was in business, I felt like I was working 100-hour weeks, making less than anybody else on my staff. I could have gone anywhere else and got a job making more than that. And it was never about the money. And you just keep grinding. And there's many times I'd pause and go, I enjoyed the work, but I would be like, what am I doing? What if will I spend 40 years doing this and go look back and go, oh my gosh, it never kind of shook out, right? And then at some point, if you just keep grinding away, somehow you get over that first big hill, and then you're like, wait, we have some resources, whether they're good people or they're fun, you have some money in the bank saved, or it's both, or you have bigger clients, and whatever it is, you get to that first hill and it gets a little bit easier, and then you keep working and it gets a little bit easier. And so it just, I still always just remember it's all cycles. I don't know what the future brings, and who knows? With this pandemic, none of us really know, I think, what's yet to come. But at least realizing that, these things happen and they're just another course of business. And I do feel for people who are dealing with their first really big business crises during this pandemic, because it can, depending on the business, it can be so catastrophic.
So final question for you. I read something that where you identified Richard Branson as someone that you look up to, and you had your reasons for it. And the reason I'm asking you the question is because Richard Branson's businesses happen to be tied almost exclusively, at least the ones I know of, to hospitality, entertainment, travel, all of which have been, really decimated. And a lot of leaders are not built during, but they're sort of defined not by how great they did when things were going this way. It's by, how they acted when things were going not their way. And I know this isn't the first time for him that things have not gone his way, but I'm just curious what you're thinking about him.
So that made me think of two things. One is there's a book I think it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. But it's an amazing read. And what it talks about is that most CEOs or leaders are good in either wartime or peacetime. And it's an amazing book. And I run a lot. And so I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts as I run. And it was so interesting. It makes me think that I'm a better CEO and leader in wartime than peacetime. When we got out of the embezzlement, part of it was I didn't know what our next goal was, because the goal was to survive and pay everybody back. And so all of a sudden we're out of it. And it was like, everyone thinks we should be celebrating. And I was I didn't know what to do with myself. It took me like 6 months to kind of find my new bearings, because my purpose for business life was gone. And we made it. And now it's like, wait, we made it. Like, now what do we do? And how do we vision out the future? Now I'm enjoying visioning out the future. But at that time, it actually got out of it. It was actually in my mental headspace. It wasn't great for me. It was hard because it just disappeared.
There was no problem to solve.
Right. So for Richard Branson, I've been really interested. Why he interests me in the beginning is I just think he's such a fun guy, and he starts these businesses. Unlike me, he doesn't get too deep in the weeds, right? Which I'm the opposite of that. I need to get more of that. He finds the right people to run them. They're all somewhat interconnected, most of them. I mean, they're totally different, but they're somewhat all in hospitality. So the airlines buys the wine, that buys the music, and it's somewhat connected in this ecosystem. And he's built this virgin brand that's this fun, edgy brand, which I really enjoy his
underdog
marketing.
Too, usually,
yeah, it's the underdog. He's trying to come back with the airlines. And I've read or listened to all of his books, and it has been interesting to watch. I'm still kind of watching and learning from him, and it'll see where he's in trouble with the airlines and probably a lot more than that. And I think that what we're going to find is a lot of these smart business owners in hospitality will probably pivot to, maybe they keep some of it in hospitality, but that's not the only thing. Like for me, granted I'm small, but I've got events in IT, and IT is just more resilient for me. It doesn't, when the economy's booming, it's okay. It's up, but it's not crazy up. When the economy's down or there's trouble, it's down, but it's not much down. It's kind of the steady in the storm. The event side of the world is the opposite. When business is booming and the economy's up, it's crazy up. And when there's trouble, it's crazy down. And so it's kind of the diversification for me of having these outlets, but and us figuring out what else fits our pie. But yeah, it's been interesting to see someone with that experience and those resources of Richard Branson to figure out kind of how he's navigating the storm. And I'm still watching.
Well, Dave, you are a badass entrepreneur. I'm going to just say that, with a perspective that is, well, like you said, gritted out. It's inspirational, because as I'm listening to you and thinking about how you approach that situation, there are a lot of ways to approach that situation. A lot of them involve anger. A lot of them involve not my fault, right? How can I get out of this without really getting out of it the right way? Like you wanted, your way was get out of this the way I want to be treated, right? We did, we pay everybody, keep everybody working. That's a phenomenal perspective, and I applaud you for that and for sharing that story, which probably was very hard to talk about for a long time. And there's a ton of lessons in there for everybody. And yeah, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes going through that, and I don't know how I would have done. But I'm glad I'm glad I now understand how you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for doing the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the How Did Happen podcast, where we believe that success doesn't happen unless you make it happen. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. And while you're there, please rate it and leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show, ideas for future guests, or whatever you'd like to share. And of course, you can always find me at MikeMalatesta.com. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to the How Did Happen podcast.